Hi friends! I want to do just a couple of videos this week for a little bit of bonus story time as we finish out Genesis in anticipation to Sunday morning when we will look at the beginning of Exodus, when the Israelites will be in Egypt and have grown prolifically and suddenly present a threat to the new Pharaoh. But I want to go ahead and wrap up this transition of Jacob's family from Canaan to Egypt. And I want to pick up chapter 46, verses 1 to 5. Now, we're not going to read every word. Last week, we kind of read everything that was from Sunday to Sunday, but we're just going to hit some highlights to finish out Genesis this week in our little bonus story time. All right, so we pick up the story today. You'll remember that the brothers went back to Canaan to get Jacob and to bring him to Egypt along with their families. And it took a little persuading, but Jacob agreed to go. And we pick up chapter 46, beginning with verse 1. When Israel, that is Jacob, set out on his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." Then he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes." Then Jacob set out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. Okay, so this is just a few verses, but there's a whole lot going on here. First of all, the location is important. Jacob encounters God here at Beersheba, and his dad Isaac had encountered God there as well. And so God is reiterating this promise that has been passed down from Abraham to Isaac and now to Jacob, reminding him that he's going to be a great nation. Now, this promise did not come to completion in Abraham's life or Isaac's, and it won't come to completion in Jacob's life or for many generations yet. But here, God is reassuring him. The promise is coming through you. You're going to be a great nation, and you're going to be made a great nation in Egypt, which is going to happen. That's where their population explosion happens, right? And God's just trying to reassure him, you're on the right track going to Egypt, and that God is going to go with them there. They're not going by themselves, even though it was a terrible thing to have to leave your homeland, especially in this context. Like, being ripped from your homeland is a huge deal. It'd be hard enough for us, but the relationship between people and the land in this context is even greater than what we can really relate to. This is a terrible thing that they're having to leave and go to Egypt, but God goes with them, and God's going to bring them back out. And also here, God tells him that Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. And that means when you die, Joseph is going to be there with you, which, for literally decades, Jacob had thought that Joseph was dead himself. And so this is something that Jacob could have never imagined, that at his death, that beloved son of his would be present. Okay, so they are on their way to Egypt. And now we're going to jump over to chapter 46, beginning with verse 28. Israel, that is Jacob, sent Judah ahead to Joseph to lead the way before him into Goshen. Now remember, Goshen is the part of Egypt that the Israelites are going to be permitted to settle in. And also we see Judah here is kind of taken on this role of spokesman, which we saw, sort of at the reconciliation scene when it's Judah that's saying, "Hey, I'll take the place of Benjamin," when Joseph wants to detain Benjamin. Remember, Judah's kind of emerged as this leader here. Verse 28, part 2. When they came to the land of Goshen, Joseph made ready his chariot and went out to meet his father Israel in Goshen. He presented himself to him, fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, "I can die now, having seen for myself that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, 'My brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, "What is your occupation?" you shall say, "Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and our ancestors. in order that you may settle in the land of Goshen, because all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians. Okay, so this is interesting. Joseph is, I guess it's kind of the family business to sort of bend the truth in ways that keep you out of trouble. So maybe he learned a thing or two from his father Jacob. But he tells them to tell Pharaoh that they are shepherds, because one, that will keep... it will make it make sense that they're going to stay separate from the Egyptians, because Egyptians apparently didn't like shepherds. So that will kind of give them a little bit of privacy and independence down in Goshen. Will keep them from sort of mixing with the Egyptians, which also keeps them from losing their identity, things along that nature. But also it will make them less threatening to the Egyptians. They're here as guests, and especially in a time of scarce resources, Joseph is shrewd enough to know that they don't want to present even an inkling that they might be a threat to the Egyptians by coming in and settling there. In other words, Joseph understands that they're still foreigners, even though Pharaoh is like doing back handsprings, excited about having Jacob's family come and settle, and even says that we're going to give you Goshen because it's the best of the land. Even though Pharaoh's really excited about it, Joseph takes a little more of a cautious approach. Now, were they shepherds? Well, kind of. I mean, we know that they kept flocks. They brought them with them in this journey to Egypt. That's what they were doing when Joseph was tattling on them, right? And that's what they were doing when Joseph was thrown into the pit. But according to this note in my study Bible, it says the families of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have been presented throughout Genesis as typical Mediterranean farmers, cultivating arable land and raising sheep and goats. Had they in fact been specialized pastoralists, which means shepherds, relying solely on raising livestock, Joseph would not have had to instruct them to say so specifically. He gives these instructions because he recognizes that they will be regarded as aliens in Egypt, visitors without the rights of natives, including the ownership of land. As guests who work for Egyptians, shepherding their livestock, they are less a threat than had they made claims on Egyptian land and its produce. Okay, so we'll leave that there, and let's jump over to chapter 47, beginning with verse 13. Now there was no food in all the land, for the famine was very severe. So now we're back to thinking about the famine. We got Jacob's family settled. Now we're back to worrying about feeding people and keeping them alive. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money to be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. When the money from the land of Egypt and from the land of Canaan was spent, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." Okay, so we talked about this some point last week, that Joseph was not giving them the food that he had previously collected to hold them in these lean years. No, he's selling it to them. And now the people are out of money, okay? Verse 16, and Joseph answered, "Give me your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, if your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. That year he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock. When that year was ended, they came to him the following year and said to him, "We cannot hide from my lord that our money is all spent, and the herds of cattle are my lord's. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Shall we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We with our land will become slaves to Pharaoh. Just give us seed so that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate." All right, so Joseph is helping Pharaoh. Pharaoh already has all the money, and now he's helping Pharaoh collect all the livestock, all the cattle, all their animals. And now the people are so desperate that they're offering their land and they're offering themselves up as slaves. So we see how power is being centralized here because of Joseph's plan. And the irony is that Joseph helps to build Pharaoh's power, and a different Pharaoh will eventually turn around and use that power that Joseph helped to build to enslave Joseph's people. Not so much the feel-good part of this story. All right, verse 20. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe upon them, and the land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made slaves of them, from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Now that I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you. Sow the land. And at the harvest you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the fields, and as food for yourselves and your households, and as food for your little ones." They said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my lord, we will be slaves to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th. The land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. Okay, so I think that is where we will stop for today. And later this week, I will put one more video out where we will read some of, all of chapter 48, part of chapter 49, and a little bit of chapter 50 as well. And then we'll be positioned, ready to start in Exodus on Sunday. So it's kind of a sad ending to our reading for today, but I hope you'll join me later this week for the next bonus story time. Thanks a lot for reading along.